Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Harborne Islamic Study Circle HISC Seerah session 124. We're continuing the Battle of the Trench, or the coalition, the Allied forces, the Confederacy. So it has both names, Khandaq and Ahzab. Last week we did Huyay bin Akhtab, the chief of Banu Nadir, convincing Banu Quraiza to flip sides. To change and to attack, to do a counter-offensive within Medina against the Muslims. And again, this is probably all part of their plan from the beginning, is that they would get, they've got 10,000 on the outside, and then they'll get Banu Qurayza to attack from the inside, and as a pincer movement, get rid of the Muslims once and for all. Qa'b bin Asad didn't want any part of that deal, but then eventually he succumbed to the badgering. And then Banu Qurayza, they sent out some scouts to try to penetrate the fort where the Muslim women were kept, and then they were rushed away. The Prophet ﷺ gets news of the fact that Banu Qurayza have become treacherous and they're turned their allegiance to the Allied forces, the coalition. So then he sends Zubair ibn al-Awwam to check it out. When he goes, yes, fine, he has his suspicions, and then a senior Muslim delegation, including Sa'd bin Mu'adh and Sa'd ibn Ubadah from the Aus and the Khazraj, they go, and it's clear that they have ripped up the treaty. And then the Prophet, when he receives that news, he's actually quite happy. Everyone else is obviously distraught. Although it was kept for the lie low to begin with, but then obviously people find out these rumors happen, and then the hypocrites, they start making their excuses and going back and then trying to demoralize the Muslims. And the Prophet ﷺ, in the midst of all this, at some point tries to buy off Ghatafaan to sort of reduce the 4,000 strong Ghatafani army that they have. But we'll come on to the crucial role of Al-Ghatafani today, inshallah. And the Prophet ﷺ and some of the Muslims, they missed the Asr prayer because of the intense sort of tension that they're all under around all of these issues and the threat of attack and the imminence of being, charged on, and all the arrows were being sort of fired at the Muslim places. So that's what we did last week. So this week and next week, inshallah, we'll talk about how the tide finally turns. And there's two significant events, and one is the dua of the Prophet ﷺ to support the Muslims through Allah's other armies, so the wind essentially, and we'll talk about that maybe at the end or next week. But also, when you have a firm belief in Allah, Allah sends you, victory from places you can never imagine, and this is what happened on this occasion. You obviously got the bulk of the Muslims, staying steadfast in the face of these 10,000 strong plus the fifth columnists in terms of Banu Qurayza. They, the few thousand Muslims, they held firm, right? Because this was an existential threat. They could have all been wiped out, and there was a real possibility of being wiped out completely. If you look at the numbers and the strategic, alliances and the way it was formed. But then, because of that, Allah rewarded the Muslims because of their steadfastness by granting them victory from a place they couldn't expect. So the siege has been going on for 3 to 4 weeks, probably just over 3 weeks. And then one person from the tribe of Ghatafaan, he helps turn the tide. His name is Naeem ibn Masud al-Ghatafani. Now Naeem, he's met the Prophet ﷺ a couple of times, but on this particular night, he says Allah threw Islam into his heart, almost out of nowhere, but not quite out of nowhere, because he's met the Prophet ﷺ a couple of times. The siege is going on, and he may have been going back and forth, and he's suddenly decided to become a Muslim. But we talked very briefly about him before, and this was, we mentioned his name after the Battle of Uhud. Abu Sufyan said to the Muslims, "We'll meet you again in a year's time." So that's called the Second Badr. And he said, so then the Prophet ﷺ, he's getting ready for the appointed Badr. He's about to set out. And Abu Sufyan, he makes an excuse that basically they haven't got in, he didn't want to fight. They were ill prepared. So basically, we haven't had the harvest, we've not had any food coming in, and there's a bit of a famine going on. I'm not going to go and fight. So he paid off Naeem to go and spread some false propaganda, because he wanted it to look as if the Muslims didn't show up. So he told Naeem to really big up the fact that the Quraish are sending a huge army, which is what he did. So he got some camels out of it. So Naeem went as a Ghatafani, neutral tribe, to the Prophet and says, "Look, I've seen the Quraish and there's big, fierce army, and they're ready for fight. It's probably best if you don't go." But the Prophet, he didn't fall for the propaganda. He set out anyway, and he camped there, and there was a no-show from Abu Sufyan. And then also, when the Prophet he's out on his expeditions, he signs a truce, peace treaty with the sub-tribe of Ghatafaan that Naeem is chief of, and they haven't become Muslim. It's just basically it's one of these treaties of allegiance. So basically, you ally with us, and you don't let the Quraishis have access to your routes, etc., etc. So it's that type of political or economic ties. So they signed that treaty. So Naeem has met the Prophet for a second time. So now he says that Islam was thrown into his heart this night, and so he makes his way across the trench. And we said before, this is at night time. The trench is between 2 and 12 kilometers, so it's easy just for a single person to go through the trench. And again, it's likely that even if he evades the troops, even if he comes across some of the Muslim troops, they can see he's probably unarmed, and they let him pass, because what's the single person going to do? So then he comes and he seeks out the Prophet, meets the Prophet, and then the Prophet said to him, "Oh Naeem, why have you come?" Obviously, the Prophet's met him before, recognizes him, remembers him, and this is one of the great characteristics of the Prophet. So why have you come? And Naeem says, "Look, I have accepted Islam, so tell me to do whatever you want." And Naeem, he's a noble person from the tribe of Ghatafaan, even though we talked previously about how Ghatafanis were a bit of a marauding large Bedouin tribe. They had the reputation for banditry. But anyway, I'm not saying his tribe was like that, but just generally that's the reputation they had. But Naeem, he wasn't one of the chiefs. He was a noble person, so he's not in that type of group, the very top level, who involve themselves in a lot of politics. So they would do things with political intentions. So he's a respected person, but he's not a power grabber. So when he's negotiating with people, people can trust him more so than a chief, because then they're thinking, what's his motivations behind this? So Naeem goes to the Prophet ﷺ, and says, look, I've become a Muslim, I'm at your service. And the Prophet, in all honesty, said, look, you're a single person, you can't do anything on our side. So there's no there's no significant numerical advantage of 10,000 minus 1 to a couple of thousand plus 1. So you can't do anything fighting with us on this side. However, because you're now a secret Muslim, go back and do anything you can to protect us. So he's basically saying, look, use your wits and come up with some scheme where you think can protect us. So Naeem asks, do you give me permission to do anything? And the Prophet goes, anything, of course, you can do anything. With that sort of permission from him that he can do anything, essentially. He's not going to do anything way out, obviously. But the Prophet he qualifies it and says, look, and this is a very famous incident where he's discussing with Naeem, and basically, war is deceit. So, deceit, trickery, propaganda. So he says war is deceit. So basically, use your wits to try and, sow some seeds of doubt. And again, the scholars are quite clear between deceit and treachery, right? The word used here is qida, deceit, or double meaning, or some white lies, some people would say. Whereas treason or treachery, more like it is qiyana, and that's basically making a firm promise, knowing that you're going to break it, or even though you've made a firm promise, you've done an oath on it, you go back on that later on. So that's not what, as Muslims, we're not allowed to do, right? So we can have double talk, or we can have qila, during the battlefield times, specifically on the battlefield, but we can't make treaties and then go back on those treaties specifically, or give assurances that we're not going to attack you, and then the next round you start to attack. So the word of a Muslim is very important. And again, if you've made a treaty, you need to give notice that you're going to break the treaty, or the treaty is going to be annulled. Okay. And you don't just do that, as I say, in the next round, if you know what I mean. So the Prophet says war is deceit. So then Naeem, he goes back as a single person. So he's thinking, well, how best can he use his unique skills? So he's a nobleman, and he's known by Banu Quraiza. He's known by Abu Sufyan in the Quraish, because he's already had dealings with them. Abu Sufyan's bought him off, so he's got this trusted alliance with him. So then he comes up with a really fantastic scheme to sow significant doubts. And again, this is a really tense time. We're 3 or 4 weeks into the siege. Things that are at a stalemate, nothing's moving, and he uses that to his advantage. So essentially, he goes to Banu Quraiza first, because he's in Medina. He's just seen the Prophet, so he's in Medina, and he goes to Banu Quraiza. Basically, he says, look, the Quraysh don't trust you, they want 70 of your nobles. Then he goes to the Quraysh and says, Banu Quraiza don't trust you, they're going to ask you for 70 nobles because they're going to execute them. Then he goes to his own tribe later on and says, basically, both tribes want 70 of our nobles, because they need that collateral, that assurance that we're not just going to scarper. And basically it's like a Mexican standoff, or sort of rather a standoff, where they are saying, you go first, you go first, you go first. So we're not going to go to war until you give us your 70. So we're not going to give you our 70. You give us your 70 first. So there's this sort of exchange that they want to do with each other. But that's essentially his plan, and it worked to a T. So he goes to the Quraysh. He goes to Banu Quraiza, and he goes and meets and he goes, look, I'm from Ghatafaan. You know me. You know who I am. We've had dealings in the past. Now I'm here for your own good. Now keep this secret, but essentially, this land is your land. Okay, this is your property in your land. You're living in your fortresses. Okay. As for the Quraysh, look, they've got nothing to lose if they just pack up and go. Okay, but you're going to be left here holding the can, right? You've everything to lose. If they go back, they have nothing to lose. And if they find an opportunity to attack, they'll attack. But if it doesn't work out, and we're 3-4 weeks in, they can just pack up and leave. But you're going to be in a bad situation because you've made the alliance with the Prophet, and then you broke the alliance. So you're in a tough spot. So my advice to you is to refuse to fight until they give you some of their people as collateral, right? And if they do this, they will never abandon their own until they fought the Prophet or fought Muhammad. So basically he's saying, look, you need an assurance that they're not going to leave you high and dry. So you should basically ask for 70 of their top people, right? Not their really nobles, but some of the not slaves. Slaves are dispensable. You should ask for 70 of their top people, and they should sit and fight with you. Okay, that way you're going to be assured that the Quraysh aren't going to abandon them and go. So again, sounds like a really sensible idea. So he's put that idea into Banu Quraiza. So then he goes across the trench back to the Quraysh, and then he meets up with Sufyan and says, look, and pulls him aside and says, look, keep this secret, right? You know who I am. You know my status. And I'm not going to sort of jerk you around. The news has reached me, and that I feel that my friendship owes it that I tell you this, but please don't tell anyone else. Okay? And obviously, Abu Sufyan, he is the leader of the Quraysh. They said, look, this is just a secret information. I've just found out. You really need to know. I've just come back from Banu Quraiza. You should know that Banu Quraiza regret what they are doing, and they've sent a message to Muhammad saying, if we hand over some of the Quraysh to execute, right, will you forgive us for what we've done? We've clearly broken the agreement. We regret it. We don't want to. We don't want what's coming to us. Therefore, if we give you 70 of the Quraysh, you can execute them. That's like a sort of kafara, an expiation for us. Can we be back on normal buddying terms? So then he says, look, my advice is keep it on the down low, but if they come to you and ask you for 70, then this is clearly a sign of treason and treachery. They're going to double cross you. So Sufyan is thinking, okay, fine, I've got no reason to doubt him. And he says, okay, fine, seems reasonable. Then he goes to his own tribe, Ghatafaan, and he says, look, I think they're going to want some some collateral from you, and don't give them any hostages, so collateral, until they hand over some of their own. So my advice is, insist that you take some of theirs first, okay? So that, the other tribes are going to say, look, we want some of your people. They're probably just going to, execute them or hand them over, whatever. Don't hand them over until they hand theirs over, right? And then basically you've got this standoff. No one's the first one to hand over their 70 because no one's trusting each other anymore. Okay, and again, Naeem is at the level where people think, well, he's not in it for his own political gain. They know he's a trustworthy person, so they believe his news. And then, sure enough, within a few hours, a delegation comes from Banu Quraiza to the Quraysh. So again, it shows you that people can go across the trench if it's a small number of people. There is that crisscrossing. So from Banu Quraiza, they come to the Quraysh. I'll just pause there, wait for the end of the adhan, and then I'll start again. So yes, there's a delegation from Banu Quraiza that comes to Banu Quraiza, and it's led by one of the top rabbis or Jews there, Azad bin Samuel. And now Azad, he basically says what Naeem had proposed. So he's in a sort of a bit of an arrogant mood, and again they're getting frustrated. They know that if it doesn't go to plan, they're all going to die. So he basically turned around and said, look, the Quraysh have done nothing. The Quraysh have done nothing but talk. It's all been jaw, no war. So let us agree on a date, and you attack from your side, we attack from our side, and the Ghatafaan attack from the other side. So the three different camps. However, before this, right, because we're all getting fed up. Before this, we want 70 of your noblemen because we want to be secure in the fact that you're not going to turn around when the battle gets tough. So again, it's a plausible suggestion because if and the reputation of the Muslims is that they can easily defeat a large army. So basically, he says, look, we don't want you to abandon us mid-battle. So then Abu Sufyan says, okay, fine, let me think about this, and then and then the emissary went back, and then Abu Sufyan, he turns round to the Quraysh, the leaders of the Quraysh, and he says, look, this is what Naeem told me, basically. This is a plot, a plan from the Banu Quraiza. They switch sides, they regret what they're doing, and they've said, look, we've thought about the matter, and we want you to send some of your ashraf to us so we can be assured that you won't leave. So the seeds of doubt are there, and then the Banu Quraiza, they go from the Quraysh, they go to Ghatafaan, and they ask for the same thing. And again, to the Ghatafaan, they start to get suspicious as well. And then they're having a conversation like, well, why don't you give us 70 first, and then we'll give you 70. And no, you give us your 70 first. No, we're happy to give you 70, but you need to do it first. So there is that, as I say, that standoff, and then when sort of the delegation went back to Banu Quraiza, they said, look, wallahi, we're not going to hand over one baby camel. Do they expect us to trust them that they will not execute these 70 men and hand them over to Muhammad, right? So this is what had been said, and Abu Sufyan saying, look, we can't trust these guys. So then Ka'b in Banu Quraiza, Ka'b bin Asad, he's getting really tense. So he gets a sense that things have changed, and then he starts crying out, "Woe to me! Woe to me! Wallahi, Huyay bin Akhtab brings nothing but bad luck." Again, this is when Huyay came and knocked on the doors of Banu Nadir. He didn't want to let him in because they said, look, you're bad news. We know how shifty, unreliable you are. You're just bad news. But again, Huyay convinced Ka'b, and he made the decision. So he's there. Huyay's being cursed, and then in one of the books it's written that someone else called Zubair ibn Batat, from Banu Qurayza, he said, look, if the Quraysh and the Ghatafaan leave, there will be nothing left for us except the sword. We're going to be killed, right? And why should we give them 70 of our men, right? They have more numbers than us, and they have more arms, and they can flee whilst we remain. So our stakes are much higher. We're a smaller group. They're 10,000. Why do they need 70 of us? And 70 out of 700. It's a big amount. So 70 for them, very little. So the plot worked. The agitation that all of the tribes are saying worked. And Abu Sufyan, because he came for a purpose, he knows it's now or never, right? So he then basically says, okay, fine, we've got to do things slightly differently. We can't rely on them. There's too much mistrust going on. We need to do something straight away now. So he realizes, or he senses Banu Qurayza as having a second thought. They've come, asked for emissaries. He's got the rumors that they're going to execute them. So then he sends a high-level delegation led by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, and this delegation of senior people basically go up to Banu Qurayza, and they've made the agreement. Okay, fine. Let's just cut our losses. Let's attack tomorrow. None of this toing and froing. There's just bad blood here. We need to get over and done with. We've got to set a date. So our Normandy landing is tomorrow morning. Okay, on all this tension going on. So Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, he goes to Banu Qurayza and he says, right, fine, we have decided, okay, enough dilly-dallying, we launch the attack tomorrow morning. It's a surprise attack, literally, this is after Asr on the Friday, and they'll attack after Fajr on the Saturday. However, this is Allah's plan, obviously. Ikrimah goes there on the Friday evening, so the Sabbath has already started, and so he's saying, look, tomorrow we launch the attack. D-Day is tomorrow. But they say, well, hang on a second, we can't fight tomorrow because tomorrow's our Sabbath. Let's fight on Sunday instead. And they say, well, no, what's all this about? Why? And then Ka'b says, but on top of that, we're not going to attack until you give us 70 of your men. And I go, well, why can't you fight tomorrow? Because this is our holy day. We don't fight. We don't do anything on our holy day. And Ikrimah, because he's from the Quraysh and they haven't had any significant interaction with the Jews, he doesn't know of their Jewish custom. He doesn't know that these are the rules of the Torah. They don't do any work or activity on a Sabbath. Certainly the observing Jews, and if they do, they think that they'll have bad luck, etc., etc. So this is the test of being a good Jewish person, is if you observe the Sabbath. So basically, they're saying, look, we can't fight because this is our holy day, and then there's we'll fight on the Sunday, but obviously then they're thinking, well, why are you waiting another day? You can obviously do some other sort of treachery. So then he goes back and explains this to Abu Sufyan. And Abu Sufyan, again, he's from the Quraysh. He's never had any significant dealings with the Jewish tribes, and even if he had interaction with the Jewish tribes, he would not have interacted on the Sabbath, because the Sabbath means they don't do any work or trade or travel, so he wouldn't have had that interaction with them on the Sabbath. So he's not aware of this requirement in Jewish law. So then he goes, well, what ridiculous, are they trying to fool us? Are they trying to take the mick? What is this stupid idea that you can't work on the Sabbath, or you can't fight on the Sabbath? Well, what is Saturday except the day between Friday and Sunday? It's no different to any other day. And again, they don't have this concept of a holy day. The Christian holy day is the Sunday, the Jewish holy day is the Saturday, and the Muslim holy day is the Friday. But again, amongst the pagans, they don't have this concept of a holy day, because they've all got their own different gods. So there's no unified holy day for them. So he can't fathom this out, and so he goes by Allah and Al-Uzza. This is treachery. They've double-crossed us. So then Huyay bin Akhtar, he's in the audience of the Sufyan, calls for him and says, what's this rubbish? And Huyay's trying to explain to him, and he's having none of it. And then Huyay sees how much rage Abu Sufyan is in. They've decided they're going to attack tomorrow, and they're backing out. So Huyay, he quietly crawls out, slips out the back, and then he goes back to Banu Quraiza, to Ka'b, to try to convince them that, look, stakes are really critical. You have to break the Sabbath, and we have to launch this attack tomorrow. Okay, and then he goes to Ka'b bin Asad and says, look, seriously, life and death situation, you've got to abandon the Sabbath and fight. And then Ka'b says, look, you're one of us, especially on our side. How dare you tell me to break the Sabbath, right? Even if we're going to be killed tomorrow, we're not going to break the Sabbath. This is sacrosanct. This is part of our 10 Commandments, okay? And it's just completely unheard of, that we break the Sabbath. You know the rules. Why are you asking me to do this? And so Huyay, he's in a difficult situation. If he goes back to the Quraysh, he knows that they're going to take it out on him. He's going to be he's going to be scapegoated. So he has to stay there with Ka'b bin Asad, because he's given him his promise as well. And he probably knows at the back of his mind, actually, this is going to lead to the end of me, right? And we'll talk about how arrogant he was, even right to the end, where he's about to be executed. So these are sort of the ruminations, and you can see, war is deceit. The Prophet ﷺ said, and just the propaganda of one individual getting all of these tribes to mistrust each other and foil their plans. This is Allah's ultimate plan. Their plans were foiled through Naeem, that they're not going to launch the attack on that day, and it happened to be on the Sabbath. So this is, as I say, this is Allah's Allah's planning. And then added to that, in all that mix, they've decided they're going to attack. There's the treachery. What do they do? The Prophet ﷺ, he makes a special dua. Oh Allah, the one who's revealed the book, the one who is quick in retribution, destroy them and shake the ground from them. And in another hadith, the Prophet says, do not wish to meet the enemy, but if you are forced to fight, be patient and know that Jannah is under the shade of the sword. Okay, O Allah, the one who sent the book, send down the wind and the clouds and destroy the Ahzab, the coalition, the allied forces. And then we've said before that this is the middle of winter. It's in Medina, and people who have been blessed enough to go to Medina in the winter, they know that it can get really cold, especially at night. And you're praying your Fajr there, it is actually really cold. Everyone's in their coats and their jumpers and their shawls, right? But this was an especially bitter winter, and they've run out of food. The Muslims have been laid siege to, and then in this one cold this evening, it becomes even more troublesome, because Allah does send the wind, and the clouds, probably some sort of tornado, whirlwind, or something, whips up, these gushing winds, and many of the Sahabi, they basically say this was the worst night, certainly temperature-wise, but climate-wise, that they've ever experienced. Right, middle of winter, they've had a really rough time, not enough food, and then there's a sort of mini tornado that's ripping through their camps, and it's bitter cold, right? And they can't see the hands in front of them. There's it's so windy, there's so much dust being blown up that they literally can't see the hands in front of their eyes. And again, as I said, freezing cold. And again, the Muslims, they're not in the houses, they're in their tents, and the tents are camped on their side of the trench. And it's really testing for them. And again, it's even more testing for the Quraish. Their tents are actually being blown away. Their pots and their pans, obviously they're not going to have their pots and pans and their campfires inside the tent. They have it outside the tent, but the stories are that this gushing wind blew away all of their fires, all of their pots and pans and everything. And in the midst of this, the Prophet ﷺ, he asks for a volunteer to find out what's going on, because he can sense that something's going on. He's made this dua, his own sort of barometer of sense that something's happened. The winds, the cold, the thunderstorms, they're coming. He knows something's going to happen, so he wants a volunteer to go and find out what's happening on the Quraysh side, because the allied side, the coalition, things are bad for them. How bad are they for them? We need to know what their intention is. And again, you can sense the tension in the air. So he asks who will go and find out what's happening. I need a spy. All of the Sahabi are there. All of the elite Sahabi, they were the Prophet Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Abu Talib, Sa'd ibn Ubadah, Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, he's been injured. All of them there. Everyone's quiet. And he asked for a second time, who's going to go and find out what's happening? No one says anything. Who's going to find out for a third time? No one says anything. Then he basically says, he nominates Hudhayfa bin Yaman to go and find out what's happening over there. And Hudhayfa bin Yaman is known as the keeper of secrets. He was told toward the end of the Prophet's life who all the hypocrites were, and the stories of Umar ibn al-Khattab begging Hudhayfa to let him know if he's on the hypocrite list. So that story we'll do next week, inshallah. Okay, it's getting dark, I need to pray, so I'll finish there, inshallah. So do remember us in your du'as. Do remember the ummah in your du'as. And as if you've got any questions, queries, comments, email me, WhatsApp me, etc. Or leave a comment on the YouTube. share, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, inshallah. So take care, everyone. Speak to you soon, inshallah, by Allah's permission next week. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والله إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم.